everybody, my name is Jedediah Bracey. I'm the editorial director for the IAPP here at the lovely Cosmopolitan Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I'm here with our excellent Pubs team staff all the way down there. I have Ryan Chiavetta, our associate editor, Angelique Carson, our reporter extraordinaire, editor for the Privacy Advisor, and podcast, how would we say it? Podcast?
I call myself a host.
Hostess with the mostess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't serve baked goods or drinks, but host.
And last but not least, our staff writer, Joe DeBall. Been a whirlwind of a week here in Vegas. We had some big breaking news yesterday. Alastair McTaggart, who was one of the co-architects of the CCPA, announced a new ballot initiative and released the text for it just this afternoon. It's called the California Privacy Rights and Enforcement Act of 2020, or CPRIA, I guess.
Oh my.
It doesn't really roll off the tongue like CACPA used to do.
Right.
Our old acronym for the CCPA. But that's big news, and it was great to have him here on stage during our keynote session. Dominique Shelton-Leipzig and Travis LeBlanc of the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, and Stacy Schesser.
Very hard to say. Yeah.
Of the California Attorney General's office. Had a really good conversation this afternoon or this morning about this new initiative, as well as the forthcoming AG rulemaking that's going to be coming out in October. So lots going on. Of course, beyond that, we had lots of practical topics here, from data subject access requests, ad tech, what's going on with location data. We had an update from Latin America, all kinds of really great stuff going on here. Angelique, I'm going to toss this up to you. What stuck out to you? I know you're going to be reporting on this new initiative. What stuck out to you these last couple days?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing, certainly, and it was kind of a cool opportunity for us here at the IPP, was having Alastair here the day after he dropped this bombshell, which has everyone buzzing, of course, just while we're all in the midst of trying to figure out what the final version of the CCPA looks like and what we need to do as companies to start to get compliant with that. Now all of a sudden we're contending with the prospect of something that could be even more difficult to comply with and stringent. So I haven't actually looked at the text of, I've been calling it CCPA version 2.0, but I knew that at some point it would be, the true name would be revealed. So it'll be interesting to dive deep. But it was cool having those four sort of rock stars on the stage, and you could almost sense a little bit of tension, I think, between Stacy, every single time, Stacy Schesser, very difficult, and Alastair, because she actually said she feels like she's at the AG's office, they're sort of playing 3D chess with Alastair. Every time they make a move, he makes a counter move, and but she did say that the AG's office is going to stay laser focused on the task at hand, which is to promulgate the regulations under the CCPA and to help to enforce it. I thought Travis LeBlanc made a really good point that we put out a survey recently with OneTrust that found that 2% of companies are basically ready for a CCPA. Travis actually said, talking to people at the conference, I think it's probably even less than that. And he said, despite that, if you're a company with a big trove of data, if you're a household brand, really whoever you are, but especially for those companies, you really need to be doing your best to at least try and comply. Because even though the AG's office isn't going to start enforcement actions until July of 2020, they can actually enforce retroactively back to January 1st, 2020, when the law comes into force. So
and there's city and municipalities have some rights.
Some power, yeah. So it was a really fascinating, dynamic talk, and I thought some really great perspectives, and nice to have to hear it from the horse's mouth. Alastair did say that there's a mandatory 35-day comment period on the new version, the new Citizens Initiative, and he does want to hear from people. He did mention that he is pro-business, and we hear that from him frequently, and he's trying to walk that middle line of reasonableness between protecting consumers who are more than ever calling for their privacy rights and allowing business to flourish. He did note, that he could have, I think, as sort of defending himself, he could have put a private right of action into the first version of the CCPA, and he didn't, because he didn't think that was fair. So it'll be interesting to see how people weigh in, and I think we're going to be grappling with what this new version of the CCPA looks like for many months to come.
Yeah, you can definitely expect us to be working in that in the coming weeks. Like I said, the text just came out. It's 51 pages. If you follow @Daily Dashboard on Twitter, you can find it there, and we'll definitely be having more content on that tomorrow in the coming weeks, so definitely stay tuned for that. Beyond CCPA, it's not all just CCPA here. Ryan, what did you see this week?
Well, you say it's beyond CCPA. What I'm talking about is still going to tie a lot into CCPA, which is data subject access requests they're popping up in almost every session, even if they're not necessarily about data subject access requests. There's still a lot of questions that people have about the best way to handle them. Went to one of the sessions on DSARS yesterday, and it was a packed room. Everybody's asking a ton of questions about whether they should have an intermediary to handle data subject access requests, whether they should build their own solution or find one of the many tech vendors that take on that capability. How much of that process should be automated and the considerations around that, and verifying the people making the requests based on the research that came out of DEF CON a couple months ago. And some of the vendors on our exhibit floor are starting to try to solve that problem because it's one that will continue to go on.
Just real quickly mention what that DEF CON research was.
So a researcher from Oxford University posed as his girlfriend to try and get as much information about her as possible, and it opened up a lot of eyes to some loopholes that could be found with the data subject access requests.
He was able to get some of that information from companies.
There's still a lot to go about it. I mean, it popped up in a session about reporting to the board. It popped up in the Latin American session as use cases. So that's just, it's, especially with the California Consumer Privacy Act, and we're already year 2 into GDPR. There's still a lot that people have to figure out about these requests. And I think it's one of the things that, with the California AG's guidance coming out, that will help inform what happens when January 1st comes around.
Excellent. Joe, what did you see this week?
This was, again, the first go around for me in terms of...
This was your first big event
First
with the IAPP,
First big event, first big conference. The thing that really stuck out to me was the last session that I went to today, which was US DPR and whether, there was going to be a federal, or could be a federal privacy law. It's basically they're comparing it to the GDPR and the EU General Data Protection Act. In general, the message that I got out of it was a lot of people seem to think that, we're seeing a lot with CCPA, and obviously what Alistair came out with yesterday and we're all talking about today, it seems like it's really starting to push things towards a federal law. But, talking with the panel that was there, we had Obama administration officials that were there kind of, going through things, and they really don't think that it really has pushed it that much yet. They think that it's more of a listening phase still, and we're probably about 10 years out.
Oh, wow.
That's what I said.
That's the farthest estimation I've heard so far. That's interesting.
Everybody was sitting there, and we all raised our hands at about 5 years. And, that was the general consensus, and they kind of sat up there and looked at us, and they were like, I think you guys might be a little off on that. So... but I mean, beyond that though, what they kind of talked about in that session too was, and kind of an underlying theme that I heard was, again, baseline privacy programs. And really, I wrote about this in the first workshop that I attended on Monday. Was it Monday?
It was Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
Geez, we've been here all week, guys.
Feels like this.
We're running.
We're all over the place. Yeah, this is. But yeah, no. In that workshop, it talked about really trying to get a privacy program going on baseline principles that can kind of, again, extend out and be able to, instead of having to really overhaul with different legislation that comes out, you're able to really instead just kind of tweak things as it goes. And, that's what really they talked about in that final session today when they're talking about a federal law, which is, it might be foggy in a sense, but overall, you can kind of prepare yourself by just kind of getting that baseline program set.
Lay the groundwork, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to carry on that?
No, I mean, it's interesting to hear 10 years. I'm based in DC, and as you guys know, and I frequently hear 3 years, but even I do think that seems like optimistic because we just have such a tough time in Congress with any conversation in general. So I would also be sort of surprised if we push something through within 3 years. At the same time, I'd love to see some action on that. I'd love to stop writing about the if and when and just start writing about here it is. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see
Two countervailing forces at play here, it seems. On the one hand, the political realities of DC right now.
Right.
We're starting an impeachment process, and we're going into a presidential election next year. So
Right.
there's a lot of uncertainty there,
Yeah.
one thing. But at the same time, with Alistair's new ballot initiative, this might put pressure on industry to really ramp up maybe some more lobbying or more efforts in DC to maybe, trump this, maybe I shouldn't use that word,
Yeah.
this California legislation and try and get something out of Washington. So it'll be interesting to see how those kind of countervailing forces play out
Yeah,
in the
for
coming
sure.
years. But I agree, I think it's hard to imagine a federal law in the next year or two.
Yeah.
So to be determined there, right?
Yeah.
What else stuck out to all of you, Angelique? Was there...
We had a really great session today. I always get super nervous when it's me moderating a panel. I don't know why, but will never get over that, I don't think. But we had a great panel today. Ryan actually came and reported on it, so we'll have a story on that this week, which will be great. But I've been hearing from a lot of privacy professionals that they've been struggling a little bit to find jobs from really qualified, talented people that I interact with in DC, have the pleasure of interacting with in DC. So we wanted to have a discussion about what are companies looking for? Are those expectations realistic? Should you apply for that job even though you don't check every single box? Should you kind of go for something that seems a little bit out of your reach? Strategies for having solid interviews. So we had a representative from the public policy team at Facebook. We had a job recruiter who works in the privacy and recruiting space who told us that privacy is his hottest industry to recruit for right now of all the industries. And then we also had Callie Schroeder, who is a good friend of ours, a former Weston fellow at the IAPP, who recently went through the job search, the very frustrating process of job search, and could provide that perspective. So we had a really nice conversation about, from kind of those three diverse perspectives, about how to approach getting your next and hopefully best gig, and had some really great audience participation, some real practical questions, and some takeaways about making sure your LinkedIn profile is updated and being prepared for that question. Specifically, the Facebook representative was saying the question that he often asks people is, what's one thing we've done wrong? And that you should go in, and I think that probably applies to any job you're applying for anywhere. You should go in knowing the company, knowing what public steps they've taken or maybe missteps, and having an answer for that. So I thought it was a really robust conversation that we had, a good session. Hopefully people came away with some ideas about how to approach their next gig in the privacy industry.
Great.
Yeah.
Certainly a universal thing, like just even any industry. Just,
Yeah.
I felt myself going back to coming out of college and being like, oh man, how do you get all this experience and how do you get your foot in the door? And
Right.
I think it's such a new industry that these issues are coming up, but I think that they're going to be solved quicker because of the need that people need for these people to.
Right. You're going to have to start letting people in the door and training them up eventually because there's such great need for them in the marketplace.
One of the things I noticed this week, I don't know if you all experienced this as you talk to people here attending here, was it seemed to be a lot of new faces, a lot of first-time conference attendees,
Yeah.
a lot of folks kind of finding their way into privacy. I talked to a few different attendees who have kind of come into privacy through security, which I thought was interesting. So I don't know if any of you found that this week as well.
Just a lot of crossover, I felt like, too. Again, if you're sitting here and you're saying, you think of an IAPP conference and it kind of comes back to the privacy angle, but you're seeing a diverse amount of people from different branches that are trying to bridge the gap in some departments, which I thought was kind of interesting. And again, the age limit as well. I mean, there wasn't, you're seeing people of all ages trying to get this. It's not an older crowd, it's not a younger crowd. Everyone is trying to get behind this.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Callie Schroeder on the panel today was saying, was that it kind of works to her advantage sometimes when she's applying for jobs because everyone pretty much has the same amount of experience with CCPA readiness, right? Because it's only been alive for a couple of years, and sort of the same thing with the GDPR. So if you're coming into the market as a newbie, a lot of people are grappling with all of these new regulations, and so you can kind of be competitive even if you are a fresh face,
Excellent.
Yeah.
I happened to lead a panel on Tuesday talking to some journalists, which was pretty interesting. We had Kashmir Hill, who also spoke on our keynote stage today, and it was really interesting to hear her talk about her experience quitting the big 5 tech companies, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon. And she said Amazon was the hardest by far for her to quit. And we also, on this panel earlier, had Alex Kingsbury, the editor of the Privacy Project, the New York Times opinion page that's really exploring different privacy issues throughout the world, and Joseph Cox, who is a reporter for Motherboard and Vice, talking about how they're reporting on privacy. These are really complex issues that all of you, our members, are dealing with, that we're trying to cover and that they're trying to cover, and helping the average consumer understand the complexity of the ad tech ecosystem and what different laws are meaning for their lives. So it was a really interesting conversation. It was funny, right before going up on stage, Alex, who not only edits the Privacy Project, has a broader role at the New York Times, had just gotten word that Nancy Pelosi was going to be announcing impeachment proceedings for Trump right as we went up on stage. So that was pretty interesting. He was able to still maintain a good conversation with us. So
it's been quite a week for all of us here in Vegas and the U.S. as a whole, I'd say.
Yeah. And just out of Europe, the CJEU, the Court of Justice of the European Union, ruled on the right to be forgotten, the long-standing Canil Google case. So it's never a dull moment here as a privacy reporter at the IAPP.
Not at all.
Any closing thoughts?
I'm ready for a beer.
Yeah.
I think. Let's
I'm
try
ready for
this.
some
we
sleep.
all are,
really.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's grab a beer, cheers, and catch up on our Z's, I think.
Excellent. Well, thanks for all your great work, and thanks for tuning in all. We'll see you at the next conference, hopefully. We'll next be at the Data Protection Congress in Brussels, so hope to see you there.